Zlatko, give us a snapshot of how you see your education reforms.
Well, as Daniel said, I mean, being in the middle may be a dangerous place. You can imagine when Slovenia is in the middle, how dangerous place is Bosnia and Herzegovina, which was literally in the middle of former Yugoslavia and the war that we had 20 years ago. As we heard yesterday from Vika Pota, I mean, I don't want to hear any problems. I just want to hear some solutions. I mean, and people like us, right? Like Vika, when people like us are talking from their experience, they're usually talking about the problems that they were facing too. And I will just talk about lessons learned and some solutions that I think are based on experience that we have. 20 years ago, the war was ended in Yugoslavia. It was the war in between two ways of seeing the future of the country. It was the war in between two visions, in between the vision of shared society on one side and the vision of segregated society on another side. 20 years ago, the war was over, and we had the three armies on the ground, out of which one was actually, their generals were committed and they were sentenced in Hague for war crime, named even genocide. So 10 years after the war, we managed to have what a lot of people thought the toughest reform. There was unite three armies that were shooting to each other in one army. Today they are together, the people that were against each other are shoulder to shoulder backing them in Iraq and Afghanistan in UN peacekeeping missions. But what we did not manage to do is we did not manage to reform educational system properly, and today we are actually teaching, preaching the kids, which ultimately may end in three armies if we don't change educational system. So I found out that education is being on the margin, especially after a big crisis and when we are going into the nation-building process. This is the reason why I think that we heard yesterday, I think from here, from this podium, Mr. Canada, that was coming from Harlem, who gave excellent comparison by saying that we who are gathered in here in education, we should be somehow like Dream Team, American Dream Team, put together and do something really substantially in education. I think that the governments for 21st century, they have to be dream teams for education. Ministers from different departments, as well as prime ministers, they have to understand that education deserves a completely different role that it used to have before. So if we want really to talk about the, let's say, the future, we have to create a little bit more sense of urgency based on complacency that is more than self-evident, as Daniel said. Sense of urgency, have a guiding coalition among all players in a government to be one dream team of educators and for education, regardless of the fact, are they ministers of agriculture, military, police, or whatever. Because we have to understand that in the governments, when you're in real politics, I mean, you have so-called, as one of my professors used to teach me, they are cold and hot ministries. Cold ministries are like research and development or education. You don't see the fruits so early. But hot ministries, we are all obsessed with hot ministries. Finance, police, even healthcare. So we all have to somehow think and change the way of thinking in order to be a dream team for 21st century. Speed, change, technology, these things are something that we have to be aware of.
Hot ministries, cold ministries, very interesting concept that, isn't it? How all ministries are not exactly equal because some of them are judged more in present results and some, if they do yield results, will get the credit or the blame down the line. And that is a very good point. I think policy people perhaps are more comfortable with that. Politicians, for good reasons, are often nervous about it. Who else on the panel has a view on how far partnership with unions is the right way to go? Zlatko?
Yeah, well, I think I halfly agree. Or let me put it this way, I 90% agree. I think the key word partnership covers 90% of everything, but the partnership, I think the key partnership is partnership in between parents and schools. Because, of course, there are different, I completely agree with Daniel, I mean, the partnership of business and government and all, but partnership in between parents and schools is the key. Because we know that we are actually, I don't want to quote a lot of thinkers from billion years ago to the fresh ones, who were talking about that we even, at that time it was acknowledged that we have to educate or teach the new generations to have a character and to have capability. So education is more and more becoming about capability, but also more and more about character because we need bigger knowledge. I think that partnership in between parents and schools and educators in broader sense. And
so you're saying you would put that above partnership with the union?
Definitely, definitely, with all the respect of trade unions. But I think when I talk about schools, I'm talking about trade unions as part of the schools. I wouldn't put such an emphasis on trade unions. I would put on a core element. The reason why education exists is not because of teachers. They're not the reason why that exists. So the reason why education exists are actually the students, the kids. That's one element. Second element, I think that we need more partnership in between of people who are today in this world are caring and thinking about education, and partnership between them and leadership of different countries on different layers. I myself was, until 25 years ago, I was 35 years old as a professor, young professor, computer scientist, thinking that I can teach the things in a class at university and that I can change the world. I even thought that by teaching computers as something that is happening on the horizon will make the world different. But then I was 35 years old. I realized actually that the country is run by the worst students in a variety of the ways. So my point was very simple. I mean, we had to move in arena of politics. And now I think that today we have to be more educators to leaders and being listening to leaders in what their thoughts are. And that type of partnership is something which I consider very important, because to make a long story short, I think it is very, very important to point out that political will is the key element for any reform. And in order to have political will, we have to have leaders who have political will for it. Political leaders will not be moved by, Andreas had excellent presentation about the facts. They're saying how productivity is raising up and so on and so on. Benjamin Franklin was talking about it a long time ago. But I mean, politicians are moved by, you can move them by why to do something. You cannot move politicians just by giving them hard facts, because they on the end have to hit the hearts of the people. And you have to hit the heart of the leader. And the best way to hit the heart of the leader is to motivate him on why this has to be done. And yeah. I'll finish later, okay?
No, that's great. Yes, well, everyone's dying to come in. Can I just take Zlatko first on that, and Iveta and anyone else?
Since I mentioned the very importance of political will, I think, as I said, there is, no silver bullet in education, and political will definitely is not one. But I think that political will is the key element. It's precondition for everything else. Example that Your Excellency mentioned, that some governments are using or misusing, let's say, education in order to cover up the problem of unemployment, is excellent example of political will, which is completely wrong one. So political will is actually, this is a perfect example. There should be if there is political will to substantially tackle the problem of education. That's what I'm talking about. The substantial tackling education as the key element of the new millennium. To be very precise, you see, when we are talking about how to measure the things, there are a lot of theories. I have my very good friend of mine, professor, prime minister of my country. He was saying to me that in high school, he said to his kids, I want you 3 grades to be A. And I'm satisfied. English, and the third one, pick up what do you like. Mm-hmm. When I asked him why, he said, math, because it teaches you at this stage how to think. English, so you can talk to a lot of people more than only people in your neighborhood. And the third one is pick up what you like, because what you like, you will spend the rest of your life with. So, that's one of the metrics. But that from yesterday's experience, I was talking to some people yesterday after a very interesting opening presentation. And this comes to a previous question. What we have to, with education, to measure and to promote more. Capacity, there are no doubts about it. You have to be capable for something. We are teaching them to be capable of something. But character, I emphasize character. I emphasize cooperation. We have to teach the kids cooperation.
I'm going to make your checklist short, just because the clock's really running against us, and we might just try to get around the floor.
You're right, because I have 11 C's, believe me, just like a dream team in football.
Good, there's a promise. Yes, Zlatko.
Yeah. Well, I think the best way to tackle from regional perspective is that we have networks of people like this is the one. We have in here the best teachers in the world. I mean, there's very old holy, one of the holy books saying that, I mean, I've learned much from my teacher, I've learned more from my colleagues, but the most I learned from my students. And that means that you're a wise teacher. So I think that students and teachers from the grassroots level, from best cases, they are the ones who should be driving reforms and pressing the leaderships.
So hang on, it sounds like you don't really have that much truck with the idea of a regional approach if you want
With all
more
due respect,
grassroots one.
there are attempts, like European Union is doing a lot in that context, to do some kind of, let's say, regional and EU things. There are a lot of doubts about it. Bologna process, which a lot of people are critical about it. So that's the reason why I'm offering to someone else. After all, I mean, we should be looking at the future. And if the teachers are the ones who are actually seeing the future, the best teachers see the future, because the future of the countries is actually in their classrooms. So that's the reason why I think that we should be more, let's say, relying on experiences of the best practices of the best people on the ground who are creating new generation of best kids.